This is Eric from Wisdom Heart, and I received a beautiful comment/question from a reader who says, I often wonder how planning ahead relates to being in the moment. Be here now masters must have to make plans occasionally, right? Isn't that a beautiful inquiry? Because the surface mind, when it hears planning ahead, and when the surface mind hears being in the now, it does what the surface mind is conditioned to do. It sets up a polarized either or and potentially conflicting relationship. I can either plan ahead or I can be in the present moment, be in the now. And many of us who have been identified with planning ahead, building a future, moving towards the goals that we set, have discovered the tension and the anxiety and the suffering that being overly fixated and particularly identified with that perspective can bring. And so this be in the now, reside in the present moment, can it be experienced honestly as an antidote and as a medicine for calming down the nervous system and for offering a new orientation. But then we can be identified with that and then set up a new form of polarity. And the problem is that the conditioned surface mind is a polarizing, fragmenting perspective. Essentially, it sets up this relationship between this here, the self, and that there, the world. And the world takes on the form so often of being threatening, being challenging, being overwhelming, being uncontrollable. And so planning from this perspective becomes a strategy for self-protection and for control. Unfortunately, it's an endless struggle because the dichotomy is a false one. We're not separate from life. We're part of life. And we can't be separated. We are embedded. We are interwoven. We are part of the sacred web of existence. And so we shift as we move on to the awakening path from experiencing polarization, either orness, to recognizing that the path of life, in truth, the awakening path, which is what life is paved with paradoxes, not with polarized opposites. And the awakening consciousness lives more and more fully, more and more comfortably in that domain of endless paradoxes, both and. The awakening consciousness abides in the both andness, the apparent conflict, which is at a deeper level, a generative paradox in which there is no conflict between planning ahead and being in the now. So the awakening consciousness, for that perspective, from that relationship with life, it recodes the relationship from one being a threat to life being the teacher, life being the guru, the ultimate remover of darkness, that is unconditionally supportive and endlessly inclined towards facilitating our awakening, the fulfillment of our deepest dream, of our true fulfillment. So the support is always coming. The support is always present, relentlessly, patiently, persistently, ever presently. But how can we open to this unconditional support? How can we experience and receive the transmission of the great teacher? We do that in the now. So this is the shift. We do that in the now. We shift attention into the openness of the present moment. And in that openness, we meet life in an uncontrived and undefended way so that we can receive the message of completeness that is encoded inherently in every present moment, the message that nothing is missing. There's nothing to gain and there's nothing to protect as the barriers of our awakening heart dissolve and we become more and more intimate with the heart message of life itself. And as we become more and more abiding in the presence of that inherent completeness, in the nothing's missingness of existence, another paradox is revealed. And this is the paradox that while the completeness of life is discovered or rediscovered in the now moment, in the present, that completeness, that grace is expressed in the movement of time. So we realize inherent wholeness in the timeless present, and we embody and express that wholeness in time. And this is super, super essential to embrace as the paradoxical gift of our incarnation, that capacity to simultaneously experience the wholeness in timelessness and to express it endlessly and evolvingly, if that's a word, in time. As we begin to move fully into that paradox, we discover something important. We discover the limits of our capacity for embodying presence and expressing blessings in time. We can realize it in the timeless, but we discover the blocks, the wounds, the knots in our embodiment that limit our capacity to fully and authentically express that grace. So what do we do with that discovery? This is where we're circle back to planning. We make planning into a spiritual practice. We make plans that are opening us up to vulnerably and curiously discover what life wants to teach us, how life is guiding us. So we're not designing plans as forms of self-protection and control, but we make plans as ways of deepening our capacity to bring the sacred openness of the eternal now into time. We make the plan and we step into it, and we don't know what's going to happen. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches Arjuna over and over again, you have the right to work, but not to the fruits. It's another way of saying you can plan and then enter into that plan as a servant of life and as a student of the presence, so you can discover more and more congruently how you can express that grace and express that beauty, how you can untangle the knots, because you're going to meet them, not just within yourself, but in your situation, which are mirrors of the knots within. So we plan in this way. We plan to open, to discover, to deepen our capacity to embody and express the radiance. And when we do this, we will feel enlivened and we will feel vulnerable. There'll be a kind of tender joy. and an embrace of the uncertainty that is a feature of deepening your awakening. So we don't need to, again, in that uncertainty, circle the wagons, and pull up the covers of self-protection. But we do need to, in our daily practice of meditation and in our daily practice of planning and taking action, familiarize ourselves more and more with the paradoxical sensations and experiences that arise when we wholeheartedly step into the expression and the offering of our gifts in life. So planning ahead and being in the present moment are the two wings of the dove, so to speak, that allow our spirit to soar into the unknown bliss of the next present moment.